Across America's sun-drenched stretches, there are places where the world seems to pause. Towns where the light hits the earth in a way that feels deliberate, almost designed. You step out of your car, or you turn a corner on a quiet main street, and suddenly it feels as though you've walked onto a film set. Not because anything is staged, but because the landscape itself carries a quiet, cinematic confidence. For many people, desert towns awaken something gentle and familiar, even if they've never lived in one. That longing for space, for silence that doesn't feel empty, for mornings that unfold slowly, and evenings shaped by long shadows, and a sky that refuses to rush toward darkness. In an era defined by rising rents, heavy traffic, constant notifications, and the uneasy pace of change, the desert offers a softer request. Breathe, look around, move at your own rhythm. And tucked within these wide, open places are communities that are very real. Grocery stores where the cashier remembers your name. Small cafes where the morning light pours across the counter. Neighborhoods built on routine and steadiness rather than spectacle. Their beauty isn't loud. It's lived in, shaped by heat, wind, and the patience of people who understand both. In this video, we'll explore 10 hidden desert towns that truly look like movie sets. Surreal at first glance, timeless once you settle in. We'll talk affordability, community character, the appeal, and the trade-offs that come with desert living. And by the end, one town will rise to the surface as a reminder of why these landscapes continue to captivate anyone searching for a quieter, steadier life. So stay with me, and let's wander these places together. If peaceful living calls to you, subscribing helps more than you know. At number 10, we arrive in Terlingua, where the earth feels ancient and the silence almost theatrical. This is the kind of place where the landscape does most of the talking. Long stretches of ochre soil, weathered adobe ruins, and a sky so open it almost feels like part of the town's architecture. Terlingua doesn't try to look cinematic. It simply exists that way. Housing here follows the rhythm of rural West Texas. Median home prices often sit below national averages, especially when you factor in acreage, off-grid setups, or homes in need of some care. Rentals are few, and when they appear, they're usually simple casitas or shared desert properties in the modest range. It's a market shaped less by volume and more by possibility, appealing to people who value space more than polish. Daily life carries a gentle, unconventional heartbeat. The community blends artists, longtime desert families, remote workers, and retirees who wanted quieter horizons. The cost of living leans below national norms, though essentials can require long drives, and summer heat has a way of dictating the day's pace. But for those who come here intentionally, that's part of the appeal. A life shaped by landscape, rather than schedule. What Terlingua offers in return is rare. Proximity to the vastness of Big Bend National Park, a creative network where people know one another, and the freedom that comes with low-density living. It's a place for solitude seekers, storytellers, and anyone ready to trade noise for sky. And on a quiet Tuesday morning, as the sun lifts over those clay-colored hills, the entire town turns gold. A fleeting glow no camera could ever fully capture. At number 9, we step into Pioneer Town, where the main street still looks like a Western film waiting to roll. The wooden facades, the dust, the stillness. It all carries the quiet illusion that a camera crew might appear at any moment. But beneath that cinematic surface is a real community, living day to day in a place originally built for storytelling. Housing here reflects its unique draw. Median home prices tend to sit on the higher side, shaped by the ongoing creative migration from Los Angeles and its closeness to Joshua Tree's magnetic landscape. Rent ranges vary widely, influenced by seasonal visitors, short-term demand, and the simple reality that the town's housing stock is small. Cost of living leans above the national average, not because Pioneer Town aims for exclusivity, but because popularity has a way of reshaping even the quietest places. The town's character is unmistakably eclectic. Musicians rehearse in converted cabins. Artists find inspiration in the shifting desert palette. Longtime locals steady the community with routines carved from decades of desert living. For creatives, desert lovers, and those craving a slower, more intentional pace, Pioneer Town feels like a place where imagination can breathe. Yet trade-offs come with the charm: limited housing, fewer everyday conveniences, and higher expenses than many rural areas. Still, the land offers its own kind of abundance: beauty, light, and the feeling of living inside a story. And if you stand on Main Street at dusk, you might hear the wooden saloon doors creak as a high desert breeze moves through, brushing amber light across an empty street that looks almost suspended in time. At number 8, we arrive in Madrid, where galleries fill old miners' shacks and the highway curves like a scene from an indie film. The town sits along the turquoise trail, unfolding in a single, colorful ribbon, part history, part creative experiment, part desert daydream. What was once a fading ghost town has become a small arts village that feels both revived and quietly timeless. Housing here reflects its scale and spirit. Median home prices tend to fall below many areas of Santa Fe County, offering a slightly gentler entry point into a region known for its creative pull. Rentals are limited, often just a few scattered casitas or upstairs apartments, and when they do appear, prices can sit above rural New Mexico averages. The cost of living stays close to national norms, shaped more by the town's size than by any attempt to be exclusive. Madrid's character is unmistakably bohemian. Artists paint with doors open to the street. Retirees sip coffee on porches strung with old lanterns. Small business owners craft spaces that feel hand-built, personal, and imperfect in the most charming way. Life here is simple, creative, and unhurried, a place for people who don't mind a narrow main road and a sky that feels close enough to touch. Of course, trade-offs come with the allure. Tourism along the Turquoise Trail can tighten traffic in peak seasons, and public services are limited in a town this small. But the reward is a community with texture, bold colors against dusty hills, history woven into every board. And if you picture a bright turquoise door catching the afternoon sun while a lone motorbike hums past, you'll understand the quiet cinematic spell Madrid casts without even trying. At number 7, we reach Beatty, where the desert feels endless, and the nights look like a starfield pulled straight from a sci-fi film. There's a stillness here that settles over the land, like a long exhale. Open valleys, rugged hills, and a horizon that never seems entirely finished. Beatty sits at the edge of vastness, a gateway to landscapes that feel both ancient and strangely futuristic. Housing tends to follow rural Nevada patterns, with prices often running below the state's urban averages. Some homes come with generous stretches of land. Others sit quietly along older neighborhood roads. Rent ranges stay modest, shaped by a small but steady supply. And with a cost of living that rests below national norms, life here feels financially gentler than many parts of the West. Beatty itself carries a humble, grounded personality. Longtime families, park workers, retirees, and curious travelers all thread through its routines. The cafes know their regulars. The pace stays slow, and the land, always the land, frames daily life with a kind of respectful silence. It's a good place for explorers, for people who appreciate solitude, and for anyone who finds comfort in a wide horizon. Of course, the desert has its rules. Summer heat can be intense enough to reshape your habits, and local healthcare options are limited, meaning longer drives for more complex needs. But for many who choose Beatty, these trade-offs are simply part of living in a place where the landscape is both your neighbor and your backdrop. And if you stand outside at midnight, with no sound except your own breath, the Milky Way stretches above you, arching over a silent highway that disappears into pure blackness, as if inviting you into the next chapter of the desert. At number 6, we stop in Alpine, where a tiny city rises from the desert like an opening shot of a modern western. It's a place where the mountains feel close, the streets stay calm, and the sky seems to stretch just a little farther than you expect. Alpine carries a gentle blend of frontier texture and everyday life, the kind of town that feels crafted by both nature and community. Housing here tends to be approachable, with median home prices sitting below many of Texas's larger urban markets. Modest apartments, small casitas, and older single-family homes make up much of the rental landscape, keeping monthly costs in a reasonable range. With a cost of living that stays below national averages, Alpine offers structure without the financial pressure found in bigger cities. Life in the town is shaped by a rare rhythm, part college energy from Sul Ross State University, part old Texas ranch culture, part quiet desert steadiness. You'll feel it in the small bookstores, the local cafes, the university events that ripple into the community, and the easy conversations that happen in the grocery aisles. It's a welcoming environment for families, remote workers seeking calm, and retirees looking for predictability without crowds. The desert brings its realities: long distances between major cities, limited specialty services, and the sense that you're choosing simplicity over convenience. But Alpine compensates with a strong community presence, scenic train routes, and mountain backdrops that give even mundane days a cinematic frame. And if you picture a soft sunset where the purple mountains turn shadowy, and a freight train glides slowly across the basin, you'll understand the quiet allure that keeps Alpine grounded in both beauty and belonging. At number 5, we enter Kanab, where red rock canyons make every street look storyboard ready. The town sits in a bowl of color, cliffs rising in deep reds and soft oranges, light pooling in ways that feel both familiar and otherworldly. Kanab has long carried a cinematic legacy. Decades ago, crews filmed westerns here, drawn by the landscape's natural drama. Today, the cameras are fewer, but the sense of being inside a film never quite leaves. Housing reflects the pull of this scenery. Median home prices often sit near or above Utah's rural averages, shaped by the town's desirability and its proximity to major natural landmarks. Rentals run from moderate to high, influenced by seasonal tourism and a steady flow of newcomers who fall in love with the area's quiet, expansive beauty. With a cost of living that leans above national norms, Kanab isn't the most budget-friendly spot on this list, but what it offers in daily views is hard to quantify. Life here is grounded by a warm, long-standing community. Neighbors know each other, conversations linger, and the slow pace feels intentional rather than remote. Outdoor lovers find themselves surrounded by possibility: slot canyons, open plateaus, and national parks just beyond the horizon. Retirees and families settle in for the same reason: a desire for peaceful living framed by some of the West's most striking landscapes. The trade-offs are real: more tourists, higher housing costs, and a bit less solitude during peak seasons. But even with those pressures, Kanab holds on to its gentleness, its friendliness, and its sense of scale. And if you imagine a morning when the cliffs ignite into bright orange just as the town stirs awake, you'll understand why Kanab still feels like a scene waiting for its next quiet moment. At number 4, we pull into Lone Pine, where the Sierra Nevada rises so sharply it looks unreal. This is a place where the desert floor stretches quietly in front of you. And then, almost abruptly, the mountains lift into the sky with a kind of cinematic authority. For decades, filmmakers have come here for that contrast: the rugged Alabama hills in the foreground, the dramatic peaks behind them, and a light that seems to shift with every hour. Housing in Lone Pine reflects its remote, beloved nature. Median home prices vary from year to year, but often trend below many of California's statewide averages, making it feel unexpectedly attainable for such a visually striking region. Rent ranges stay modest by California standards, though still higher than what you'd find in many rural towns beyond the state. Overall cost of living sits near or slightly above national norms, a blend of small-town simplicity and California's broader economics. Life here feels both peaceful and adventurous. Longtime residents, hikers, filmmakers, climbers, and retirees share a landscape that encourages exploration. Days unfold slowly. A stop at the local cafe, a glance toward the mountains to see how the morning light is landing. A sense that nature is always the main character. Families who love the outdoors often find a rhythm here, shaped by trailheads, open roads, and quiet evenings. Of course, the desert meets alpine environment brings its trade-offs. Housing availability can be limited, and the weather swings dramatically: hot summers, cold winters, and a shoulder season where the wind seems to sweep across everything. Yet for many, those seasonal shifts are part of the charm. And if you picture jagged peaks glowing soft pink as a tumbleweed drifts across an empty road, You'll understand the way Lone Pine blends stillness, scale, and cinematic wonder without ever raising its voice. At number 3, we arrive in Truth or Consequences, where the name alone feels like a script cue. The town unfolds gently along the Rio Grande, with a landscape that mixes sun-baked quiet, retro storefronts, and a rhythm that seems to move half a step slower than the rest of the world. There's a touch of whimsy here, not forced, just part of the town's natural texture, shaped by hot springs, old motels, and the soft hum of desert life. Housing remains approachable, with median home prices trending below national averages, and rentals that hover in the moderate range. Apartments, small bungalows, and retro homes form most of the marketplace. The cost of living stays below U.S. norms, giving retirees and remote workers a sense of financial breathing room that's increasingly rare in warmer, scenic regions. Truth or Consequences, or T or C, as locals say, carries a personality that blends vintage charm with creative community energy. Downtown feels like a mid-century postcard, neon signs catching the sun, low buildings casting short shadows, warm colors fading beautifully in the heat. The hot springs culture adds its own quiet heartbeat, inviting slow mornings, relaxed evenings, and conversations that unfold without hurry. Of course, the trade-offs are part of the landscape. Job variety is limited, especially for those needing traditional industry roles, and summer heat can settle in with a weight that shapes daily routines. But for many, the simplicity, the affordability, and the steady warmth, both from the climate and the people, make this a place that feels gently restorative. And if you picture steam drifting up from desert springs as the first light of morning glints off old neon motel signs, you'll understand why T or C feels like a town suspended between past and present, carrying its quirks with quiet pride. At number 2, we reach Oatman, where wild burros wander the streets like supporting actors. The town feels paused in another century, a pocket of mining-era history tucked into the rugged slopes of the Black Mountains. Wooden storefronts lean into the heat, dust rises with every footstep, and the whole place carries the uncanny sensation of a movie scene left standing long after the crew packed up. Housing here is limited, shaped by geography, historic preservation, and the steady pull of Route 66 tourism. Median home prices shift with availability, sometimes modest, sometimes surprisingly high for such a small place, and rentals are almost non-existent. The cost of living trends moderate for rural Arizona, though daily life leans rustic, shaped by charm rather than convenience. Oatman's personality is unmistakable. There's humor in the way the burros roam the streets, nudging visitors for treats. There's pride in the old mining facades and handwritten signs that haven't changed in decades. And there's a sense of community among residents who choose to live in a place where history isn't restored. It's simply maintained by time, weather, and the stubborn endurance of a town that refuses to fade. For retirees, history lovers, and travelers seeking a life textured by storytelling, Oatman offers something rare: authenticity without polish. But the trade-offs are clear. Services are minimal. Specialty shopping is miles away, and seasonal crowds can transform the main street into a living exhibit. Still, the town's spirit remains steady. And if you picture a dusty street at midday, where the sound of hooves echoes between wooden storefronts and the desert sun hangs heavy above, you'll feel the quiet, cinematic strangeness that makes Oatman unforgettable. At number 1, we arrive in Moab, a place so visually dramatic, it feels like the opening shot of an epic film. The town stretches along a valley carved by time, framed by red rock cathedrals, deep canyons, and mesas that rise like ancient monuments. Light moves differently here. It softens, intensifies, and lingers in ways that make even an ordinary afternoon feel cinematic. Moab isn't just a town near the desert, it is the desert, sculpted into a living backdrop. Housing reflects Moab's global appeal. Median home prices trend above Utah's statewide averages, shaped by steady tourism, limited inventory, and the magnetism of the landscape. Rental costs follow the same pattern, leaning higher than rural norms and shifting with the seasons. And with a cost of living above national averages, Moab asks for intention, a choice to trade affordability for access to one of the most striking environments in America. Daily life revolves around the outdoors. Families set out early for trailheads. Retirees walk along red rock paths washed in morning light. Remote workers find themselves pausing mid-email just to look out a window. The community feels active, but grounded, a mix of longtime residents, park employees, artists, and people who simply wanted to be closer to this landscape. For those who can manage the expenses, the payoff is a life framed by wonder. The trade-offs come with the beauty, increased housing costs, seasonal crowding, and the reality that many conveniences orbit around tourism. Yet Moab keeps its soul, a blend of rugged quiet, warm community energy, and geography that almost defies language. And if you picture a sunset turning sandstone arches into glowing embers above a quiet desert town, you'll understand why Moab takes the top spot. Not for what it promises, but for what it reveals the moment you stand still and look. Every desert town carries a kind of stillness that cities can't imitate. Out here, time stretches, sound thins, and the horizon becomes a companion rather than a boundary. The beauty doesn't arrive with fanfare. It settles in quietly, in red rock, weathered wood, and heat shimmering above an empty road. And for many people, that whisper feels like permission to slow down, to breathe, and to imagine a different kind of life. Moab earns the top place not because it's hidden, it isn't, but because it represents the full cinematic power of the American desert. If this list were a film, Moab would be the final sweeping shot. The moment the music rises and the camera pulls back to reveal something larger than life. Yet beyond its staggering red rock arches and sandstone cathedrals, Moab remains a working small town, one balancing real trade-offs, real families, and real questions about how much growth a fragile landscape can support. What makes Moab remarkable is the way it blurs the boundary between the ordinary and the extraordinary. You might pick up groceries with canyon walls glowing behind the parking lot. You might head out for a simple afternoon walk and find yourself in scenery that filmmakers cross oceans to capture. That contrast, daily routines unfolding against an epic backdrop, is what gives Moab its emotional gravity. It reminds you that life can feel both grounded and expansive at the same time. But choosing a place like Moab requires intention. Tourism comes in waves. Housing costs run higher than most desert towns. And the community is shaped by people who live close to the land. Hikers, park workers, climbers, storytellers, and families who've known this valley for generations. It's a place where you're asked to adapt to the rhythms of nature rather than expecting it to adapt to you. For some, that's a rare kind of gift. The reward is a daily relationship with a landscape that feels mythic, ancient, and quietly transformative, a place where sunrise and sunset become anchors in the day. For others, Moab serves as a reminder that across America, there are still towns where life moves at a human pace, where the horizon feels infinite, and where the world manages to feel enormous and intimate all at once. We've just traveled through 10 desert towns where reality feels cinematic, not because someone shaped them for the screen, but because the land itself knows how to frame a moment. Each one carries its own rhythm, some quirky and creative, some soft and quiet, some rugged enough to make you pause, and others so grand they feel almost unreal. And somewhere within that range, people discover a version of life that feels lighter, slower, and more spacious than the one they left behind. Maybe one of these towns surprised you. Maybe one stirred something familiar. Or maybe you simply enjoyed the reminder that America still holds unexpected beauty in its wide-open corners, places where the sky does most of the work, and life settles into its natural pace. Which place spoke to you, and why? If you enjoyed this journey, subscribe for more peaceful, real-world stories of American living. For real-world escapes, not fantasies.